Hello, everybody. Welcome you very warmly, our panelists, but of course also our audience. I think that it is very important to meet and to discuss some issues related to DMA and DSA. In our panel, we will focus on Digital Market Act, because when we are considering how important it is to have new regulation in some areas important for digital development, at the same time, we have to remember that those regulations, those new legislative initiatives could have impact also and very often unintended impact and consequences for the functioning of business, especially small, medium enterprises and startups. So this is the goal, objective of today's discussion, to consider what is the role of DMA. On the other hand, it is important because it is the background to create fair competition, but how this new solution shouldn't kill and destroy innovation, and on the other hand, those activities which exist. So we will have many topics, and now I will turn to Maria Grappini. She will open our discussion. Please, Maria.
Hello everybody. Good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you SME Connect for organizing these events. Of course, online, it's online. I prefer physical conference, but now it's not possible. Dear colleagues, dear guests, as the host of the first part of today's events, I would like to thank you all for your participation and interest in our topic today, and look forward to hearing your views on the Digital Market Act, which aims to ensure that platforms behave correctly online. Together with the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act is one of the central pieces of the European digital strategy. Through the legislation on digital markets, innovators and technology startups will have new opportunities to compete and innovate in the environment of online platforms without having to comply with unfair conditions that limit their development. From my point of view, SMEs not only encourage economic recovery, but also build for the future, bringing innovation and grow with a unique multiplier effect, generating new jobs as they grow and identifying and connecting with customers of global level. In my capacity as Vice President of Commission Internal Market and Consumer Protection, but also a former entrepreneur for a long time and Minister for SMEs and Business Environment, I believe that when creating regulation, we should take into account the needs of SMEs. We need to design legislation to create the best possible regulatory environment for our European businesses to thrive, remain competitive in a global market, and continue to contribute to local and systematic innovation. These new pieces of legislation will provide a coherent, effective, and proportionate framework for tackling the problems of the digital economy that currently cannot be solved or cannot be solved effectively. I believe that it's necessary to ensure the proper functioning of the internal market by promoting effective competition in digital markets, and in particular a questionable and fair environment for online platforms. Last but not least, I believe that by ensuring a level playing field, the new rules would allow SMEs, including commercial users and providers of essential platform services, to develop within the whole internal market as a result of the elimination of important barriers to market entry and expansion. The measures envisaged may also lead to increased competition between platforms for commercial users. This is expected to lead to improved service quality, more competitive price, and higher productivity. Commercial users, in turn, would have more confidence in online sales, as they will be protected from unfair practices and protection consumer, because my committee is internal market and protection consumer, and I think it's very important for we'll have in each legislation protection consumer. I hope that after today's exchange of views, we'll be able to adopt legislation on the digital market that is favorable to SMEs and which is non-discriminatory. Today, this morning, I had one breakfast with intergroup for SMEs because I am vice president for this intergroup, and we had the same discussion. It's necessary. We don't only discussion for SMEs. It's necessary we'll have practical measure for helps SMEs. And I think his legislation, Digital Service Act and Digital Markets Act is very important for SMEs. Thank you very much and good luck for debate. And I hope we'll have very good results. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria. I think it's important what you have said. Our expectations related to DMA was very high. Now there are many controversies, and we need to find the most adequate way to achieve our goal. Yes, not to destroy the development of digital enterprises and digital platforms, and on the other hand, avoid some unintended consequences. And we will have excellent keynotes, and I think they will describe the landscape for our discussion, and concrete, they will present, as I know, concrete analysis and suggestions related to DMA, especially to Article 5 and Article 6. Carlo Stagnaro, Research and Studies Director, Instituto Bruno Leoni. Please, Carlo, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, and like Honorable Grappini, I hope we will go back to the floor as soon as possible instead of this in the screens. Well, the time is very limited, so I will try to just mention a number of points, and perhaps we may discuss them later. First of all, let me start by saying that it is very important that the European Union and member states struggle to make online markets both integrated and competitive. That's a fundamental service that is provided to the development of Europe and to SMEs in particular, because both SMEs are the seeds of the development of new potential large groups, and because SMEs in their daily job need to use the services from large online platforms. In my speech, I will raise a few critical points about the DMA, and I actually will conclude with a sort of constructive point about it. So first critical point is that the starting assumption of the DMA is to some extent a tautology. There is no clear discussion about the real role of so-called gatekeepers. In fact, what we only know is that gatekeepers are defined as large online platforms, and at the same time we are told that they are large because they are the gatekeepers. So there is somehow a lack of analysis to some extent. My second point is that this is also due probably because we tend to, in the context of debating about the DMA and about competition in the digital world, we tend to treat all these large platforms as if they were doing the same stuff and they had the same kind of problems. Whereas Apple is not Amazon, which is not Google, which is not Facebook, which is not Microsoft, and so on and so forth. Each of them may pose problems to the fair competition in the digital market, but each problem is different from the others. My third point is that through many or perhaps all of these large platforms have in the past or are still in the present engaging in potentially harmful conduct, but we do already have the means to counter this behavior. Both in the ex-ante regulation, for example, in the GDPR with regard to data protection, and in the ex-post enforcement of antitrust rules. We have many cases, both at the European and at the national levels, which have been brought against the big platforms, and many of them have been appealed, and sometimes the courts have been on the side of the antitrust authorities, sometimes they have been on the side of platforms. So on top, I think that both the Commission and national authorities have a very powerful tool to deal with these large platforms, which is merger control. True enough, in the past, merger control has not been exercised in a tough enough way, probably. At least some of the past mergers should have been evaluated more carefully, but still the tools are there and we have to use them. My last critical point is related specifically to Article 6 of the DMA, and particularly on the obligation to allow sideloading in the platforms. I think this is a very peculiar point, and I'm quite skeptical about it, because while I understand the rationale in some cases, a generalized obligations basically implies a choice of a specific business model. That is open platform versus closed environments. Whereas we know that competition is not just about providing the same services at a different price or somehow different services to the customers, but it is also about making an organizational choice, how you structure your productive process. By dictating organizational choices, competition is eventually reduced, not broadened, which does not mean, of course, that some specific company may abuse of these instruments, but again, we have traditional competition law to deal with this. Having said that, I think there is also a strong argument in favor of some sort of regulation of competition in the digital markets, which is the risk that each member state takes its own legislative choices, resulting in an excessive fragmentation of the market. We already have, to some extent, this kind of phenomenon. We are already witnessing this risk. For example, in Germany, they have adopted some regulation regarding the market power of large businesses. Italy, France, and other countries have banned the use of most favored nation clauses in the online travel agencies business, and several member states, including again Italy and I think also Austria, have introduced taxes on online profits. This is a very serious risk. If we want the digital market to develop, we have to have a single internal digital market at the European level, and therefore I think it is very welcome and very important that the EU develops some sort of EU-wide regulation. So my final point is that I think we and SMEs in particular need a DMA, but not necessarily this DMA.
Thank you very much for the very precise analysis of DMA and the deficits which exist in this legislative proposal. And I think we will use it during our discussion, and also we will think about some recommendations. And especially the last sentence you have raised the DMA, but we need to consider if this kind of DMA. Thank you again. And now I want to ask our second keynote speaker, Andreas Aktodiamakis, from EU Digital Lead Policy Analyst, European Policy Center. Please, Andreas, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, everyone, for having us in this very interesting panel to participate today. And the topic, of course, is something that I have been working and others on for a long time now, the DSA, DMA. It started as a DSA, then it became DSA, DMA. So, you know, we're 1 year down the road, and then, you know, we see developments taking place as we speak. So just from my side, just to say, you know, a couple of developments that have happened recently in the Slovenian presidency that circulated draft versions of the DMA and DSA. Now, there is also a concern, you know, if the deadline for the Competitiveness Council in November will be met. And if it is met, then these drafts are very close to what will be the final versions. What is the most remarkable from what we see now is that bids from France, Germany, and the Netherlands to get national competition authorities more involved in the enforcement of the DMA have been unsuccessful. Also, we see that definitions of core platform services have remained more or less the same compared to the first draft. And now we see also there is no movement on the provisions under Article 5 on mandatory obligations for the gatekeeper, and no movement on the provisions about the Article 6 on additional obligations that the Commission might decide to impose. This contrasts the Parliament's draft report, which has seen many additional obligations being added. And one more point on the regulatory dialogue under Article 7. We have seen member states raised concerns previously that the gatekeeper should be allowed to ask for clarification, but in the new text, the Commission has persisted that it will be the sole decider, that the Commission will be deciding whether or not to engage in regulatory dialogue with a gatekeeper. So you know, these are some of the developments that you know, we see or we expected to see some movement, but haven't seen much. And so I guess this is also very timely debate because the vote will be soon in November. A couple of points about SMEs. Well, of course, they represent around 99% of the single market. So it's very important that we get this Digital Markets Act right. And maybe at the beginning, when it was tabled, we were not thinking about what could be the spillover effects into other parts of the single market. But, you know, we have to remember, and I'm sure everybody on this panel knows that very well, that we are here about to regulate an entire ecosystem and not just the big 5 companies or so that are targeted directly or indirectly by the DMA. So this is concerning because we want to give SMEs the ability to compete on an equal foot with big tech companies, but maybe the way of doing that is a bit, you know, it is certainly a new way of doing it because we haven't had regulation like that before, right? And we have competition authorities in the past. They seem to have failed to address this very fast development and growth of big tech companies at the member state level or even the European level. So this is why we have moved on to ex-ante regulation, which is something that we also see that maybe the Americans are adopting in a similar approach in tackling this. So before we see, you know, bigger effects of EU regulation conditioning other territories to adopt similar regulations, we have to make sure that you know, these are the regulations that we will want to have for the time looking ahead. And there is one of the articles in the DMA, I think it is Article 16, it speaks explicitly about how one can target companies that could become gatekeepers. So companies that are not gatekeepers currently, but could become gatekeepers in the future. So I think that, you know, while we want this regulation and we want to make markets more contestable and fair, it is a bit hard to forecast, you know, to start treating somebody as a gatekeeper because they might become one in the future. So I think maybe, you know, these are a few points that will need more clarification. And just to echo a little bit what Carlo mentioned earlier, merger control in particular has most spectacularly failed. And this is something that maybe would be a stronger regulatory approach that could also, you know, bring more positive value to our single market. It seems that merger control is an aspect that you know, has worked in the past, and it worked for other big tech companies a couple of decades ago, like Microsoft, right? So we see how Microsoft has learned a lot, and it changed completely since that ruling back then in the US. So you know, at this point, I think, and this is also what we are doing in our work at the European Policy Center, an important project we are driving forward, the Digital Clearinghouse. Our job there is basically to start having discussions with EU regulators and to discuss how merger control can be brought to the fore again, and how can we you know, how can we exchange on best practices about merger control in the EU, as this is something that will certainly be a very strong way to complement the DMA if the DMA goes forward in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for a clear message addressed to us. And also thank you very much for updating us, informing about the draft version of the document, of the proposal. And it is very interesting that, as you have mentioned, this is a difference between the draft version and the version presented by the European Parliament with many amendments. So if I properly understood, it is much more closer to the first version, to the original version presented by the European Commission. But of course, there are also some question marks and the need of clarification, some topics and points in this proposal. And thank you very much for taking into account the issue related to merger problems, because I think it's important. Now, due to our plan, we are starting the regional debate. So we have invited representatives for Central Eastern European countries, because it is very interesting how the business, small business, active in those countries, especially it is very important for the economic development of those countries, is what is the view of those companies, small companies, for the DMA proposal. We will start with Virgilijus Dirma from Infobalt from Lithuania. The focus and the goal of this regional debate is to indicate some probable problems related to implementation of DMA. So what kind of positive contribution the DMA could bring to the functioning of the SMEs, and what kind of unintended consequences DMA could bring. So, Virgilijus, the screen is yours, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Virgilijus. I am from Lithuania, from ICT Association Infobalt. We have many customers which are serious think that must be improving regulatory dialogue, and DMA aims to regulate highly complex and dynamic markets, very different services and business models. And its approach fails to fully reflect this complexity and lacks the flexibility needed to address changing market conditions and customers' habits and technical progress. And any regulatory intervention in the DMA should not only be measured against fulfilling the objectives of platform fairness, but need the balance against secondary objectives like user preferences, security and privacy. And proper regulatory dialogue should be introduced as a precondition for clarifying the scope and application of obligations to increase the legal certainty of the regulation. And narrow scope of DMA would capture only American technological companies. Then it's a little bit worrisome that this situation will leave room for Chinese like TikTok, Alibaba companies, or Russian Yandex companies to have a free ride in the European Union. Let's think about this. And for sure, single market for Lithuanian SMEs, it's very, very important, because everyone is working with big platforms, and these regulations very, very worries our companies.
Thank you very much. Again, I think it's important to understand how this regulation could worry us, yes, could worry small business, and you have expressed very strongly that the flexibility and flexible solutions are very needed when we are thinking about users and small businesses. Now we want to give the floor. Thank you, Virgilius. Now we want to give the floor, the screen, to Michal Kardos from the Sapie company from Slovakia. Michal, the screen is yours, please.
Skip to
So
another
we can move to Michał Kanownik from ZIPSE Poland, yes? And we will wait for connection from Michal Kardos, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure, I hope that we will find a connection with Michal Kardos finally. For now, from my side, our Polish side, a few opinions about DMA. Of course, it's a very complicated situation, but we need a regulation in this area. But of course, we have to find a balance between interests of big platforms, SMEs, and consumers. It's a really very difficult question how to find this balance. And of course, for European Commission, for Parliament, for sure, it's not so easy. But I'm afraid that more and more discussion about DMA and this project is not for something, and in my opinion, all regulations should be prepared for something, but this regulation more and more, in my opinion, is going to be against something. It's a very risky for European Union, for European market, especially in digital area, because we could we could be in the place where we kill the innovation in Europe, and this is very, very risky for all our market. I would like to mention a few examples where I'm afraid of this regulation. First, for one example, very strictly about interest of SMEs. We are talking about the DMA, and we have some suggestion that we should have in DMA some kind of ban on targeted ads. Of course, one hand, good idea. But on second hand, we have to remember that right now, targeted ads are one of the most important sample of the modern commerce for SMEs. If we will include a ban for these targeted ads, we will kill SMEs because SMEs will have to find the other strategies much more not so cheap. And they will have to spend a lot of money for different kind of sources to find the clients on the market. We have to remember that the big platforms are the crucial partner for SMEs on the European market and for consumers, because we all are using these services from the biggest platforms, and we have to remember about it. That because if we cut some kind of these services, for sure for SMEs and for consumers in Europe, it will be definitely not good way. For example, ex ante regulation, which Andreas mentioned about this regulation. It's a trouble in my opinion, for European digital companies, because nowadays our economy is based on data-driven algorithms and scaling. If we under this regulation, ex ante in this DMA, in my opinion, there will be risk for European companies that we will have some problems with innovation in new businesses. What more I can say about this? For example, we have to remember about digital single market, and we have to avoid a situation that we will prepare a DMA against some regulations in digital single market right now in Europe. For example, digital single market is a document which was prepared by all market with a lot of work, a lot of discussion. And for sure, such principles of digital single market as country of origin principle, the guarantee of freedom of provide digital services across borders in the Union as respect for fundamental rights, I think we have to remember about it during our discussion about DMA. And finally, because I hope that the rest of our guests would like to say something more, 2 sentences. First, we have right now a specific situation on the global market after COVID, post-COVID time of economy. Absolutely, we need a lot of innovation, a lot of investment in digital business, digital economy right now to do something more for SMEs, for global economy, for customers in whole world. I'm afraid that DMA in this version, it's very risky that, in my opinion, for Europe, it will be a lot of negative consequences. I think that DMA in this version will kill innovation in digital economy in Europe. We have to discuss one more time with all business, big and small, and consumers, how to build the DMA one more time, but in modern and open for innovation way. We have to remember that gatekeepers on the global market, in the urban level, for example, of course, we have this big platform, but in every country in Europe, we can find some kind of gatekeepers on national level. What's about them? They will be not good gatekeepers on the European level, but on the national level, they have crucial impact on SMEs and consumers' rights. And finally, absolutely one last sentence from my side, Michal, I promise. We have to be very careful and remember that over-regulation is never the right answer on some problems on the market, especially on the digital market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michał. I fully agree with your opinion, because I think that the background for the discussion 2 years ago about DMA was unfortunately related to prepare something which will be against something. We know what is going on, yes? And I think this is not the good background for the proper legislation. And you have mentioned how important it is to understand that digital market and digital activities, especially SMEs, have changed during the COVID time. There are many new initiatives, there are many new services, there are many new forms of using digital tools, and we need to redefine how we need to build the regulation. So this is the further voice about redefining the DMA. So it is, as I have said, very important. And now, as I know, we have Michal Kardos. So please, the screen is yours. Please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, finally. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so thank you for inviting me, and it's a great pleasure to be here with you today. First of all, I would like to mention that I'm representing the Slovak Alliance for Innovation Economy, which is an association representing more than 130 companies, mainly based in Slovakia, a lot of startups and scale-ups. And therefore, I'll be talking about innovation and supporting innovative companies, and what's the relation between DMA and some possible threats that the DMA may bring to innovation in the European Union. We have a lot of discussions with the key stakeholders, policymakers, with the government in the Slovak Republic about different policies, how to support innovation and startups and scale-ups. As well as we, for example, have a discussion, and I have discussion, our organization has discussions with, for example, EU Commissioner Maria Gabriel about how to boost the innovation ecosystem in the European Union, how to boost the number of startups and scale-ups. And so we can see that the support for innovative companies is really priority in the European Union, and we want to see more startups, scale-ups, and as well as unicorns. We can see that we are somehow lagging behind the United States as well as China when it comes to the number of startups and scale-ups. And Europe is farther down the road in this debate, but has yet to demonstrate that the new revolution in competition law and policy proposed in the DMA will no further suppress innovation and entrepreneurship in Europe. And we have also a lot of discussions with other EU member states, and we also agree with the views of the pro-innovation EU member states that have expressed concerns about the suppressing effects of hard regulation under the DMA on future innovation in the European Union. For example, representatives of Estonia, for example, warned that it is crucial to refrain from over-regulating online services providers. And we also agree that it is important to carefully weight every measure's impact on innovation, consumer welfare, and business users' legitimate interest. What we want to see is basically some radical development in the European Union innovation ecosystem. But also there are some signs that the adoption of digital tools as well as providing digital innovative services can be hampered by different measures and overregulation, and we think that DMA could slow down the adoption of innovation and digital technologies by European industry, and mainly for three main reasons. I would like to mention these three main reasons. The first one is that increasing regulatory costs will drive barriers to entry, therefore reinforcing rigidity in the economy and status quo companies. Incentives for smaller and medium-sized platforms to innovate and scale up will be suppressed, as anticipated threshold effects inject uncertainty into their calculations. The second point I would like to mention, and the second reason, is that the DMA's ex-ante regulatory proposals may also reduce incentives for large online platforms to provide new innovative products and services to European businesses and consumers. As well as restrictions on the gatekeepers, including prohibitions on bundling, would directly suppress the ability of platforms to innovate by developing new products and services for customers. And specifically, Articles 5 and 6 overlook the innovation dynamics resulting from the initial creation and subsequent innovations of a service. And the third point I would like to mention, and the third reason very quickly, as large online platforms are constrained opportunities for natural affiliations between relatively less digitalized European firms and highly digitized US firms can be reduced. So what we are trying to say is that there is a great threat coming from the DMA in terms of suppressing innovation potential in the European Union, and that's basically my take on this.
Thank you very much, Michal, for the very clear message addressed to us. And if I could say, it is the need, the necessity to have some kind of innovation test, innovation check when we are discussing about new regulation. Yes? How this new regulation will impact on innovation dynamics. Yes? So thank you very much for raising this topic and this area, because I think it's crucial. And finally, last but not least, in our regional exchange of views, David Cikanek, Expando Global from Czech Republic. David, please, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I will, as a first one here, share my screen because I prepare just a few slides for a few minutes. Let me start with, we are Expando Global, despite the fact that Expando is a Spanish word. We are not a Spanish company, we're a Czech and Slovak company representing a few hundred of marketplace sellers. We are a private company paid by the sellers, and we are some kind of agency for them. So when a smaller, medium or smaller company wants to join an Amazon or Kaufland marketplace, they usually need some help, and that's they asking Expando for help. So we see the trends from perspective. We operate of hundreds of third-party seller accounts. So we are not just party of one, we are not just one seller, but we see the trends, the problems, what's the real problem and what is not. I would like to just point out the things that haven't been mentioned yet to speed this up. I ask our partners, I ask our sellers, why are you joining marketplace? Why you are doing that? And this should prevent the legislation to block something. Most of the smaller and medium sellers, they only channel in a foreign country is marketplace. They don't have capacity to have customized web store, for example. They only use marketplaces because it's super fast and super cheap for them to expand their business. On average, our partners, this is totally individual for Expando sellers, we generate them 15% extra revenue. So they have some domestic e-shop, they have some brick and mortar store, but they also connected to the marketplaces like Amazon, like Kaufland, like bol.com in Netherlands, and so on and so forth. And they generating 15% extra margin. We are covered behind the marketplace brand, but it's useful for us because nobody knows a Czech company, and let's be honest, nobody's waiting for a Czech sellers in Germany. But if they shop on Amazon and you have good Amazon reviews, there's no hesitation to buy stuff from you because you are a good Amazon seller. So there's basically no need to display or have some direct links to the web store because we don't have any sometimes. It's very fast. Within 1 month, the seller can join it, and because there's not much bureaucracy, there's not much administrative blocks. There's even like let's say a foreign bank account or something like that. And the last but not least argument is it's just bigger market. We are Czech and Slovak market, which is the digital market. Let's say it's just one. It's 50 million audience, 50 million people audience. Just single big marketplaces in the Western Europe, they're sometimes like 5 times bigger than the country, just one company. So it's super convenient for the sellers to basically compete for the broader audience. I think it's, and we don't have much time to go over these arguments, but sometimes what is misleading is marketplace is not a web store. It's like a shopping mall. You just have a space on the platform which limits you somehow, and it's a trade-off. You want to have more data from a customer, okay, rent your own boutique on the 5th Avenue, which is super expensive, but you have the ability to customize everything and have the data. You cannot want the data from marketplace when the advantage is easy to set up. You don't need the knowledge. You don't even need the language. This is very important. Like a lot of our customers, they sell in Italy, France, Germany, and they sometimes never even been in the country. They just have some manual, just some basic English or just some native speaker English. They don't need to have a Spanish native speaker, Italian native speaker, and so on and so forth. And these platforms just making it much more easier. So I will just send you this presentation after that. There are so many more on the internet, so you can look at the some more differences between what does that mean if you really want to customize everything and have the power behind it, and you want to have the customer data and so on. And if you want to join marketplace, it's a trade-off, and we consistently talking with sellers like join a marketplace. These are advantages, and there are some cons, there are some disadvantages, but it's a trade-off. I would like to maybe elaborate on one more thing that I think haven't been mentioned here, and that's the payments. The maybe necessity to have some other payment method than the marketplace offers you. Imagine an average Czech or Slovak seller wants to expand to 6 countries, and some of them are not in the EU, and one is United States, not even on the continent. What does that mean? You need to customize all the local payment methods. You need to know what are the payment methods. There are usually more than 1 per country, and sometimes it's 4 or 5 of payment methods preferred by the customer, and every single country have a different one. You basically need to have a local bank accounts in every single country, which sometimes means even travel to be verified in the country. You need to have an implementation connection to these payment methods, which is pretty expensive, and you need to maintain it. You need to have someone who will maintain the connection. And every single payment method have different pricing models and different fees. So when you sell one product, the margin differs on the payment method sometimes. But on the other hand, if you pick Amazon Marketplace, for example, there's one single payment method for all the countries, Singapore, Germany, and the United States, same verification, same payment method, super trustworthy for customer. So they not hesitate to give the credit card, because they're not giving the credit card to a Czech company, which can be, for them not convenient, but they're giving the credit card to Amazon, which they know. And in case of any problem, Amazon is the safe spot. They can help them in case of any scam. But it's also prevention or protection for sellers, because in my country, it's still very popular payment methods, cash on delivery. This doesn't exist on the marketplace. So all the orders that Amazon will generate for you are already paid. So you don't need to worry about the cash on delivery. There are no additional costs. It's all covered within a basic fee, so it's easy to calculate the margin, and you don't need to maintain it. So that's why I think some other payment method on the online marketplaces, I'm not talking about some other platforms because it's not my topic, will not help you. It's even not necessary. I think our partners will still be using this one, so it's not necessary to do, and same with customer data, I think. But I would like to take this chance to mention one more thing, and this is the platform to do. What is the real problem of the small and medium marketplace sellers? On the right side, there is the context for you. The third-party sellers, the marketplace, or the gatekeeper, as you call it. By the way, in the act, there's all the gatekeepers are treated the same, which are completely different company with completely different business models. But that's already been mentioned. The marketplace needs to have ability to block the seller accounts in case of any fraud, of course, or scams. And just to give you a context, there are 2 new registrations to the Amazon system as a seller system every single minute. So every 30 seconds, there is a new partner want to join. So there must be a system to prevent scammers. But what's the real problem of small and medium sellers when they have 15% revenue from Amazon, for example, or other marketplaces? This is not only exclusively to Amazon. There is a lack of communication from the marketplaces in case of any problem. And sometimes it's not even a problem, it's a mistake on the marketplace, because they have some automated robots and they are triggered by changed Wi-Fi or something like that. So your account is blocked and your funds are held. And it takes a month to be reactivated because there's no one to speak for. Most of the seller support is really basic, outsourced seller support, and they don't have ability to change it. So there's a huge mismatch between what you have done or maybe theoretically you have done, and you need a few months to be reactivated. This is the problem. But I don't think that another payment method or the customer data will somehow help the CEE sellers. Only thing I think will help them is some kind of prevention or ombudsman, or I don't know how it's called the name, that will help them in case of any problem. This is the topic I wanna mention here on behalf of our few hundred sellers. Hope it helps you to understand what is going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David, for very practical view and your readiness to share with us your experience, because I think it's crucial to understand what are the real problems important for the online sellers, and what kind of solutions are needed when there are some problems, as you have mentioned this account block. Yes? So thank you very much. I think it's very, very useful for our discussion. We have some minutes, only some minutes.
Question.
Okay, so we have the question done by Alexis Varavka. What about target advertising? Some MEPs propose to restrict it in both the DMA, DSA. Isn't there a risk what it would actually deprive SMEs from the possibility of finding new clients, markets, while very large platforms would still benefit from large amount of data in their own ecosystem? As I understood, somebody raised this question. It was Michal Kanovnik, as I know. Could you comment this question or have a short answer?
Sure. Thank you very much, Michal. Sure. Well, as I mentioned before, targeted ads have already become a staple of the modern commerce on the global market, not only in Europe. They are often considered by SMEs, especially maybe by SMEs, to be the best, if not the only way. Especially for SMEs, the targeted ads very often are the only way to find new customers, especially when they're dealing in a niche industry with little traffic, especially in the COVID or post-COVID time right now, when we have some troubles with doing business on site. So banning the mechanism would effectively eliminate one of the most commonly used marketing tools and perhaps force the companies to use more expensive strategies. Of course, SMEs will find another way, but for sure it will be more expensive strategies for finding new customers and potentially lose some of the income of these SMEs. Of course, it would shut down one of the services provided by tech companies, for sure, but that's one source of their revenue as well. So finally, unfortunately, this may cause the EU to become a less attractive market for both the tech companies and SMEs trying to reach the new audience. And in my opinion, in this area, it's absolutely clear.
Thank you very much. So I want to thanks to all of you, our participants in regional exchange of views, very practical with the message that we need to redefine DMA. And first of all, our keynote speakers during this meeting, Carlo Stagnaro and Andreas Dianakis. Now it's time for wrap up our discussion. Ivan Stefanec, the chief of SME Europe. Please, Ivan.
Thank you very much indeed, Michał, and thank you everybody for very, very useful contributions. We have really ambitions to prepare the best legislation, what we can. We would like to apply simple rules which are understandable for everybody and for disabled. I think it's very important that the rules will be implemented. So this is the challenge, because as you know, if it comes from European Commission to the Parliament, there are many, many amendments, and many committees would like to contribute. The situation is that we will vote at IMCO committee in November, so still there is time to talk, and this debate is really timely. Our amendments were focusing on, firstly, addressing market failures to ensure contestable and competitive digital markets for increased innovation and consumer choice. Secondly, for addressing gatekeepers' unfair conduct. And thirdly, enhancing coherence and legal certainty to preserve the internal market. So I hope that we can be very clear, simple, and with our rules, we will help particularly SMEs to grow, because we know that such regulation, as we are preparing it, is really brand new. Ex-ante regulation is really the new approach. And very shortly, if I can react to Carla and Andrea's comments about using merger control and competition law, I think this is a very, very good point. So DMA definitely will not replace other rules which European institutions have in the hand. Also, very important point which was raised by Michal Kardoš of SAPI about innovations. Yes, I can agree that there will be some increase of regulatory cost for platforms, but it's very important that those platforms will enable SMEs to innovate and will not block will not set up the barriers for accessing data, and which are very important for innovations. And also, I like the point that this DMA is not only for big ones, but also for small ones and for consumers. And my answer would be, we have to prepare the best environment, fair competition, which is at the end the most beneficial for consumers. So there were my remarks. I know there were some written questions at the end of discussion. So if I can ask the Secretariat of SME Contact to prepare them, and we will be happy to answer them in written as well. Thank you very much indeed, Michal, and also for great moderation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much for those questions which have been put later, so we have no time to answer, but we will take it into account. And now this is a break, and we will come back at 12:15 for the next debate and the next panel about DSA. Thank you very much.